blood flow restriction. What is it? What are the benefits? How do you do it? What's up with these silly bands on my arms? All of that coming up for you in this video. So many of you have seen the videos of me on this channel with the bands on my arms, titled blood flow restriction and whatever exercise I'm doing. I get questions again and again. What's up with the bands? Is it actually doing anything? Well, in fact, it's actually doing a lot. And I'm going to tell you what it's doing and what the benefits are to doing this. What blood flow restriction is it's restricting the blood flow out of the limb and back to the heart. Whether it's the arm, whether it's the leg, doesn't matter. There's only two areas we're doing blood flow restriction, either at the arm or at the groin. When we have the band on the arm or the groin, what it's doing is it's restricting the blood flow out of the arm. If it's at just the right tightness, it allows blood to continue to pump into your arm and to fill up your arm with blood, but it's slowing down the blood flow out of your arm because the arteries that pump blood to your arms run deep along the bones. The veins that pump the blood out of your arm and back to your heart are more closer to the surface. So when we have the right pressure, the right amount of restriction, what that does is it allows blood to continue pumping into your arm, but it slows down the flow out. This does a couple things. One, it's slowing down the blood flow. So it's causing a pool of fluid to build up in your arms. So it can result in a massive pump. Number two, what this does is it's causing a buildup of lactic acid and other metabolites. These chemical metabolic waste products build up in the tissue here, and that's a chemical stressor that essentially tricks your body into thinking that it's lifting heavy, lifting hard, and that there's this large amount of waste products that it needs to buffer. So this chemical stimulus is triggering your body into thinking that it's lifting harder, heavier than it actually is, because it's getting this buildup of metabolites that usually means that the body's working hard. In this case, we have the band working to slow down the outflow of those metabolic waste products, which causes that chemical buildup, and it tricks your muscles. It signals your muscles to actually grow, become stronger because of that presence of these metabolic waste products like lactic acid. And number three, what this does when we restrict the blood flow back to the heart is it causes this stretching mechanism. It forces a pump within the muscle. And what that does is it stretches out the muscle, the fascia, the connective tissue. And so this is a great way that we can cause your soft tissues to actually stretch. Now imagine a sausage casing. I know it seems random, brought up a sausage casing. Imagine a sausage casing surrounding a sausage. Your muscles work very similarly with fascia. You have your bicep here, and surrounding this bicep muscle is a sheath of fascia, very similar to a sausage casing. Now this casing around the muscle is connective tissue. It's fascia. It's more rigid of a tissue that can restrict tissue from growing. So if that casing is too tight around the muscle, that's going to prevent the muscle from growing. Now if we use something like blood flow restriction, where we can pump up and get a massive pump in the arm, when we pump that fluid in there, what happens is that stretches out the tissue, the muscle fibers, the fascia, everything surrounding it, encapsulating that muscle. So that extra fluid causes this increased pressure. When we have the increased fluid in the arm, we can stretch out that muscle with that extra fluid in there. And what that does is it forces the fascia, the tissue, and everything surrounding it to stretch, because fluid is not compressible. This is why hydraulic pressure systems work, because they have this pressurized fluid which can amplify the amount of force produced. The same thing happens with your muscle when it's pumped up. Whether it's the arm or the bicep that we're doing here, or whether it's doing the quads. I do it on the quads too, works fantastic. If we pump up the muscle here and then we stretch it out, what that does is it forces the fascia, the muscle fibers, everything to stretch out. Short term, what this does is it can cause a massive pump. This allows the blood, the tissue, everything to stretch and get these micro tears, which can help with hypertrophy, help with growth. What it can do in a negative effect is it can short term reduce your ability to contract the muscle. So if any of you have heard about the negative effects of static stretching and how prolonged holds of static stretching before performance can actually hinder performance, the same thing is present when we're doing some strategy like this. If we're pumping up a bunch of fluid and then we stretch it out, sure, it's going to cause the muscle to grow, these fibers to tear. It's going to cause the muscle to feel extremely pumped, but it's going to reduce the ability for that muscle to contract and relax efficiently short term. So this is not something that you would want to do before a performance, before some sort of competition. So what are the benefits of blood flow restriction? One of the big benefits of using blood flow restriction is that it allows you to get big gains, massive muscle growth, using light weight, because we're using a stimulus, more of a chemical stimulus, a variable to trigger muscle growth. We're using this chemical signal to tell your muscles that it needs to produce more muscle fibers. It needs to get bigger. It needs to get stronger. So we're using a chemical stimulus of blood flow restriction to signal to the muscle to grow. Where if you were using heavy weights, it would be more of a mechanical stimulus that you would use, because using weights, heavier resistance is more of a mechanical stimulus, where restricting blood flow, causing a buildup of waste products, chemical metabolites, that's causing the muscle to grow based off a chemical stimulus. We can avoid using heavy weights, which can be dangerous. It can also be contraindicated for certain people with injuries. We can use light weights to actually get big muscles, big, strong muscles. The second biggest benefit to using blood flow restriction is overcoming injury. For example, I have a client right now. He's a Paralympic skier. He had a shoulder injury at Beijing, and it resulted in tearing of his bicep tendon, and he had a surgery. For 6 weeks, he was basically in a sling, unable to move. For those 6 weeks, he was unable to lift even his arm without resistance. In this case, somebody that has an injury, somebody that has a surgery, blood flow restriction is a perfect option for them. When somebody has an injury, such as a muscle tear, there's a period of time where that muscle tear gets repaired and it's anchored into that place where it's supposed to be. In that period of time, when the muscle's healing, you're not supposed to move the arm. You're not supposed to move the limb. This is why they want you immobilized for 6 weeks, for that tear to be repaired and for that healing to occur. This is a perfect scenario to use blood flow restriction, because if somebody's unable to even lift their arm against gravity, we can use something like blood flow restriction, cause the body to think that it's still working hard, even though it's not really working at all. The reason for this is because we're restricting the blood flow. Again, we're not using heavy weights. We're not using a mechanical stimulus. In fact, somebody that has an injury such as a tendon or a muscle tear, they should not be lifting any weights at all. But we can use blood flow restriction in this case to preserve any muscle that they have and to potentially build up more muscle through the recovery process. So this is a beautiful way that somebody can use blood flow restriction with the right support, with the right clinician, with the right guidance to overcome an injury. I wouldn't suggest trying to do this on your own. I would suggest you finding somebody that you trust, that is experienced with this, that knows what they're doing. There are drawbacks to using blood flow restriction. There are risks involved. Just like training in general, just like so many things out there, there are still risks to using blood flow restriction. I'm going to tell you what are the things that you want to look out for in order to prevent injuring yourself while doing blood flow restriction. So when doing blood flow restriction, we want to have just the right amount of pressure. We don't want so much pressure that we're occluding both the blood flow to the arm and out of the arm. This is a negative. We want to have the right pressure so that blood continues to flow into the arm, but it's slowed down when it's coming out of the arm. So if you can look out for these three things, this is going to help you to know whether you're too tight or whether you're not tight enough. So the number one thing we want to look for is numbness and tingling. So we want to maintain the sensation in your fingers, in your hand, in your arm. If you're noticing that your fingers, your hand are getting tingly, that they're getting numb, that you can touch areas and you can't really feel it, that tells you that the band is likely too tight. So loosen the band up. Make sure that you're not compressing too much of the nerves, the blood vessels, to cause the numbness and the tingling. The number 2 thing we want to look for is capillary refill. So we want to make sure that your capillaries, the blood vessels in your hand and your fingers, are getting plenty of blood. So what you can do is you can push down on your hand and see how long does it take for the white spot when you push down, how long does it take before that turns pink again and your hand gets the color back. If you're pushing down and you're seeing that the refill time is, say, over 5 seconds, 10 seconds, that means that it might be a little too tight and that you should loosen up the bands a little bit. So the number 1 thing was to be sure that we have sensation, that you're not getting numbness or tingling. The number 2 thing is to be sure that you're getting capillary refill, pushing down on your hand to make sure that the color comes back within 5 or 10 seconds. You can also test that with your fingernails. It's the same sort of thing. And then the number 3 thing that we're looking for is a pulse. Make sure that you keep a pulse. You can check your radial pulse right here at the wrist. This is going to help you to identify whether or not the band is too tight. Because if the band is too tight, you're going to notice that your pulse is going to diminish or you won't have a pulse at all. So the 3 things to look out for is to make sure that your hand keeps its sensation, that you can still feel everything. Number 2 is to be sure that you have capillary refill, that your blood is flowing back into your hand within 5 to 10 seconds. And then number 3, you're looking to make sure that you maintain a pulse, that you can continue to feel your heartbeat, your pulse. If the band is too tight, it's going to compress the blood vessels to the degree that your pulse will diminish. You might get the numbness, the tingling in the hand, and then also you're not going to have very good capillary refill. So those are the 3 things to look out for to be sure that you're not too tight, because there are risks to this. Very few, very little. Just want to make sure that if you are doing this, that you're using some sort of strategy to understand whether or not you're tight enough. If you're too tight, you're better off being a little under tight than you are too tight. Because even if you have just a slight bit of restriction, just a little bit of restriction can go a long way. So right now with this band, it's not too tight. It's got a fair amount of tightness to it, but it's doing enough that I'm feeling the pressure build up. I feel a better muscle contraction. I'm feeling a pump. So just a little bit can go a long way. But if you're really dialing it up and really cranking it down with the pressure, there's more risk that can be associated with, say, compromising the nerve fibers, the tissue itself, if you're too tight. Also, the band does matter. I'm not going to talk too much about bands in this video. Most of the time, I'm using just a TheraBand. It's from the clinic. I'll get a band, I'll tie it off just the right way, and I'll give a video on how to actually do this yourself coming up ahead. I'll give you instruction on how to actually get the right tightness of the band, what to look out for, make sure you get it set up right, how to take it off, how to put it on easily. We'll talk about all that in future videos. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about what blood flow restriction is, what the benefits are, how to do it. I get questions all the time, so I'm going to be putting out more videos on this topic. I've been getting a lot of interest from a lot of you. And yeah, just a lot of people that have misunderstandings on what this is. Some people that are actually upset because they think that this is dangerous and risky and, taking offense to it. So we're going to be talking more about it. It's something that's helped me a ton in my aesthetic journey, not just in aesthetics, but as an athlete. And hell, I'll put these bands on if I want to get a pump around the house and just doing the dishes, the laundry, cleaning up the house. I'll throw on the bands. I'll drink a little pre-workout, put a little music on, and get a pump just doing housework. So it's a really cool way that you can use these bands throughout the day. If you don't have access to a gym, if you don't have dumbbells, if you don't have heavy weight, if you don't have anything training equipment wise, you can use these bands and just do everyday activities and still get big benefits as if you're training and working out hard. More to come on the blood flow restriction in the future. I'm actually working on a course for all of you on blood flow restriction, on why it's important, how to do it, the risks, the benefits, how to actually set this up yourself, and the training protocol on what the research suggests when it comes to sets, reps, resistance, break time, all that good stuff. Working on a program, an online course for all of you that's going to walk you through that, because so many of you are interested in doing this. And believe me, many of the clients that I turn this on to, 99% of them love it. There's a few of them that don't like it. I get where they're coming from, but it's not for everyone. But for select people that are into actually pushing the limits, getting the gains, and just looking at different alternative ways to get an edge, I'm your dude. I'm going to help you out with this, whether it's with the bands, whether it's with some of the programs, the protocols that I have put together. And I break this all down in the men's aesthetic program, the MAP. We unpack a lot of this stuff from training plans, protocols, nutrition plans, programs. Also talk about testosterone optimization, the 7 strategies to optimize your testosterone, and so much more. So if you're interested in that, you can get up the men's aesthetic program, the MAP. Check that out. You can find that in a link in the description below. But again, more is coming on the blood flow restriction topic here in the future. If you're interested in working with me, whether that's on a coaching level or whether that's looking at my programs, you can find out more at primalrx.com. You can also email me at cody@primalrx.com. Again, I'm Dr. Cody Crockett, and I'm here to help men build the confidence, the aesthetic body, and the masculine strength to become the best versions of themselves. Hope you enjoyed this. Look out for more on blood flow restriction coming soon.